Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is the Tinck Perun. Not sure on the pronunciation of that. English language, of course, I'm reading the word, so I'm hoping that my pronunciation is correct. This is a Slovenian weapon. It is a 10-inch rail, 11.5-inch, a hybrid gas system, so it's a little bit piston, a little bit DI. And it has some of the features that we've come to know and love from Eurocentric type weapons. It's getting away from the AR platform. Folding stock, it can be fired, of course, from the folded position. M-lock rail system, and it has an adjustable gas block. We'll get into all of that. They actually approached me and said, hey, we want to send one of these out to you and see what you think about it. At first glance, it had like a Scar-esque or a Bren 2-esque type appearance, but of course there's only so many different ways you can design a gun with an operating system and an intent and not have it look similar to other firearms. So some people immediately like, oh, they ripped that off. And not necessarily. I mean, a lot of guns look the same. They change aesthetics so the internet doesn't complain too much, but that's something that is kind of unavoidable. I was kind of excited about it because it's a non-AR type gun, and I like non-AR type stuff too, and I'd never really encountered this brand before. So I was curious as to what the performance was going to be like. So they did send this out to me, but I'm putting it through my normal 2,000 round review process. So let's get right into that. As far as caliber goes, the model that I received is a 223/556, but it's also available in 300 blackout and a 6.5 millimeter Grendel. There's also a pistol caliber option available, 9 millimeter. Upper chassis is made from 7075 aluminum, which is the hybrid DI/piston system. Works in there, provides us the ability to have a folding stock and still be able to fire the firearm folded. The lower receiver is a steel reinforced nylon, which is pretty common. What we see. It does have kind of a rough texture appearance to it, which I actually appreciated the additional grip on that lower receiver going through the review process. Got a non-reciprocating reversible charging handle, and of course it's got AR-centric controls as far as safety selector and trigger, and it is AR parts compatible. In fact, parts compatibility with this gun and AR-centric parts is very high. The stock system is so it has a Picatinny rear, which is becoming more popular, or it can default to an ACR style mounting system. The model I received came with an adjustable gas block on that 11.5-inch barrel. They sent it out with a superlative model, which, just getting into the review, I was a little hesitant about because I've had not very good luck with those in the past, depending on which version we're talking about. They tend to come out of adjustment with heavy fire. This is, of course, my experience. And they tend to, I think, actually provide you with too much adjustment. You can be very finicky and very specific, which is fine. So if I switch from a high pressure can to a low pressure can to no suppressor, or whatever, changing ammunition, whatever happens to cause me to need to adjust the gas block, I'll get it just fine-tuned to where I want it to be, and then it will shoot itself out of that position. Really annoying. So I was, of course, concerned with that getting into the review. I didn't want that to take away from the firearm itself. From what I'm told by the representative my point of contact over there, Tinck, is that's not going to be the permanent gas block that comes on the firearm, which is a little aggravating because I wanted to review what was going to be available to the general public, but that's just one of those things. Of course, because it does take AR barrels, it's not like a specific proprietary barrel system, or it uses readily available AR-centric gas blocks. You could easily replace that gas block if you wanted to. Actually, really easy. The rail removal is really straightforward. And of course, if you know how to change the gas block, you'd have no problem changing the gas block on this gun. So, getting into the rest of it. My first impression of the firearm was that 4 and 11.5 had a lot of rail space available. I like their step-down design, especially if you're going to run a night vision device or something like that. That put it very close, very below your. It would get it below your optic. And as far as cheek weld goes, because the receiver sits a little bit higher off of the bore axis, if you will, you don't have to run as tall a mounts in order to get a more heads-up shooting position. So I definitely appreciated that. Even though it doesn't really bother me to run a higher mount, if I have like a true co-witness or a lower 1/3 and I just throw it on there, it's going to give me more of a heads up, more of a natural shooting position, which is something I've come to prefer over the past 20 years of shooting. Non-reciprocating charging handle is reversible. Of course, I'm shooting this gun right-handed, but I do have ambi controls. Because the AR-centric controls are AR-centric in the same position that you're going to find them on an AR rifle using an AR pistol grip, I didn't really care for the ambi selector that they provide it with. because it does tend to impact and interfere with the shooting finger. However, that's easily remedied by just removing that outboard or the right side selector that you're probably not going to need anyway. My feeling on ambi selectors has always been, if you're right-handed, have a right-hand selector. If you're left-handed, have a left-handed selector. Ambi selectors have a tendency to brush against gear and equipment sometimes to sweep the gun from safe to fire, which is never a good thing. The other controls are non-ambidextrous, so it's got a very traditional A2 style magazine release, bolt catch, bolt release. They didn't go overboard with the ambiness of the gun, which some people are going to be like, well, you know, if you're going to do it, you might as well provide all the ambiness. And I'm like, just enough ambiness is ambi enough. One thing I would have liked to have seen with the addition of the rail, because if you have to make your own rail, you might as well put the features in it, is there is no integrated QD system. So you would have to add an M-LOK QD system. I just threw a BCM on there, no big deal. Actually a Magpul. Magpul when I mounted the light, and basically put all the furniture on the gun. Rail scales, I got a BCM front grip, and then the Unity mod light. Really good combination for a very general purpose, everything but night vision type gun. And then started just shooting it. The first 500 rounds was just kind of a get to know you type situation. I wasn't running magnified optics on it, so I did a 50-yard zero. Gun zeroed really efficiently, everything performed well. First couple rounds I did have some failure to feeds, mainly because the gas system needed to be fine-tuned. Once I got that gas system fine-tuned, everything performed well. Definitely one significant advantage about those adjustable gas systems, even though they can be finicky, in this case Superlative Arms, is it really allows you to fine-tune that recoil pulse. So if you're not going to run a suppressor, you get it fine-tuned and you have an adjustable gas block that won't adjust itself. In the case that I've had with some of them in the past, you can get your perfect textbook 3 o'clock ejection and a very soft, just enough gas to get things to function. If you change rounds, of course, it can get a little weird. I shot mostly 55 grain during the review process, but I also shot a lot of the IMI 75 grain Razor, which is a very accurate round for just general purposes, and the cost isn't too prohibitive. Once I put the suppressor on it, I wanted to get a good feel for the gun before that. So the first 500 rounds didn't really suppress it at all. And then I went ahead and got into the burn down, which is 500 rounds as quickly as possible to see if that accelerated rate of fire will identify any issues that I wouldn't notice otherwise with the same round count over a much longer period of time. So here's burn down. Got the gun extremely hot. One thing I did do before I started the 500 round burn down is I took a look at that gas block, and you can kind of see it on the video. Once I get into right around 300 rounds, that gas block just kind of adjusted itself, which is, again, my experience with superlative gas blocks have been, they have a mind of their own, especially with higher rates of fire. And that may not be the case, that may just be my bad luck, but it is something that I was worried about, and it kind of like, you know, my worst fears came true in that regard. I came up with a solution later on, which I'll get to. Probably not something I would necessarily advise, but it does do the job. Other than that, 500 rounds went fine. I didn't have any malfunctions. I just noticed that the gas behavior changed, the ejection pattern changed, and that's something I'm definitely concerned about. Going forward, I'm going to, take that gas block off and replace it with something a little more robust for my type of shooting. Getting into that last 1,000 rounds, looking at just the overall performance, again, coming off the burn down, I was a little bit worried, like just based on the hybrid gas system, the way things operate. And it's really hard to, I would recommend doing your additional research into the way it works, is it's kind of like a short stroke piston system, but without the piston integrated into the pre-bolt operation linear position, if that makes any sense. So it's like a long gas key almost, and technically a DI gun is technically a type of piston system, so it's very similar in that regard. And when they say hybrid between a piston and between DI, I think that's probably the best way to describe it, which does provide for an overall really good performance, really soft shooting gun. And when you suppress it and you get your gas block to cooperate with you, The performance is really soft. I shot a number of different cans, both dead air and a few others during the review, just to get a feel for high pressure versus low pressure, like a Sam NS, Sierra 5, some other suppressors. Having to change muzzle devices out, of course, depending on which can I was shooting. And as long as that gas block stayed tuned for that particular type of suppressor, I had a very soft shooting, very reliable cycle of fire. For this type of firearm, some of these folding stock guns, especially those that have short stroke piston systems, which this one doesn't, has more of a hybrid, they can be kind of snappy, especially when you suppress them. And that wasn't the case with this particular gun. Overall impression of the Perun, I'm glad it exists. I think it's a pretty solid option. One of the things we definitely need to take a look at is like accuracy. What accuracy is available? Again, you can change out the barrel. A barrel change would actually be pretty straightforward, a lot simpler than some ARs. I did, like I said, I zeroed it at 50 yards, so what I'm showing you is a 50-yard group that I fired on 77 grain Black Hills, which is what I zeroed the gun with, even though I shot mostly 55 grain, 75 grain IMI throughout the review process. But at 50 yards, shooting that 77 grain Black Hills, it is a pretty accurate platform. It is something that I would definitely trust putting like a magnified optic on, a 1:6, a 1:4, 1:8, whatever you wanted to put on it. The overall modularity of the gun for multi-purposes, especially in an SBR format. Of course, you can also run a pistol brace on it. It's going to give you a very versatile gun that is just kind of a departure. It's not something I would get just to be different, to be contrarian, to get away from the AR platform. But the folding stock option is nice. The overall controls and the performance is good. Modularity is good. I like the rail interface system. I think it provides a lot of features for a very reasonable cost. It's available, of course, in different calibers. And like I said, changing out, and this is one thing that a lot of people have promised, but not many people have delivered, so we'll see what happens with this particular firearm. Being able to easily change out your calibers is something that not everybody has been able to deliver to the efficiency or the ease of access or the availability that we would have wanted. So hopefully they're able to fill and make it easier for those people who want to do barrel swap, caliber swaps, because right now a lot of people offer it, but it's not always as easy as we'd like it to be. I think it's a solid gun. I really do. I think that they've still got a couple little bugs here and there to work out, one of them being that gas block, but they've already told me that might not be their production gas block that going forward. I would want like a simple 1, 2, I'd say, 2, 3, 4 position adjustable gas block system on there. Everything else, from the ergonomics to the performance, the gas block, once you got it tuned right, would work. Rail interface system, you've got a monolithic 12 o'clock rail, and then you've got M-LOK down here, and I'm sure you could easily, depending on how the aftermarket supports this gun, change that out for something else. But if you've got M-LOK, you're pretty much good to go. And the stock modularity, of course, is an additional feature that I think is going to appeal to a lot of people. And with multiple configurations, this can easily become a DMR type gun, an SBR, or a pistol. So I think the Perun, the X16, is a really cool little gun. The CQB model, I guess that's kind of what I'm using right here. Didn't check out, obviously, their 300 Blackout or their other caliber offerings, but I can foresee that based on kind of the attention to detail that they put into this gun, we'll see similar performance out of them. So if you're curious about a little known brand out of Slovenia, this is my kind of initial 2,000 round feeling on the Perun, and I like it a lot. I think it's a really good gun. I think it's got a lot of potential. It's definitely got a future, provided that they can actually fulfill and get them into market, get them on gun store shelves, and allow people to check them out. I'm Eric with Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly. Hey everybody, Eric with Sage Dynamics, and I'm going to pronounce a bunch of stuff wrong in this video.